The Immersive Sim has had a troubled decade or so, and I've been thinking about why. In a perfect world, we'd be getting an abundance of games like Deus Ex, System Shock, Dishonored, but we're not. So why is one of the most creative style of games basically dead? Why do so many gamers ignore these titles, and is there the possibility of a comeback on the horizon? Let's jump in and talk about it. Hi, Estelden here. I've always felt that Immersive Sims are the genre with the most unfilled potential. Whilst I don't consider games like System Shock 2 or Prey to be RPGs, which some people may disagree with and I completely understand that, what they do have in common is choice, playing however you want. It's incredibly satisfying doing a playthrough of one of these games, knowing that the level design has been intricately designed to support all of these different playstyles. Perhaps I'm a hacker who nerds my way through all these different levels. In another, I'm simply a dude who takes absolutely no shit, going in full force and blasting my way through like it's an FPS. Or maybe I'll channel my inner thief and take down corporations from within without them knowing I've even been there. Deus Ex style, and it's incredible to think that these past games pulled all of that off. So what happened? How can these sorts of games not appeal to people? Because the last titles I can think of that sold even reasonably well in this kind of genre are Deus Ex Human Revolution and Dishonored 1. If you weren't feeling old enough already, the latter of those came out in 2012. It's been nearly 10 years since a commercially successful immersive sim. And before anyone says anything, I'm gonna jump on BioShock Infinite and say that they pretty much went full-on FPS with that one. I've never really considered the BioShock games to be true immersive sims in the same way as a game like System Shock 2. They're just a little bit more action focused. Before we go too far down the rabbit hole though, I do want to clarify what an immersive sim is to me, because it's a little bit subjective. For those who don't know, the term was coined by Warren Spector and Doug Church from Looking Glass Studios, who are famously known for the Incredible Thief series. Spector is well known for Deus Ex, and in his words, an immersive sim creates a feeling that you are there, nothing stands between you and belief that you're in an alternate world. It's a creative way to look at it, and basically what it means is when you're playing one, anything is possible in real time. Let's say you're playing a game where you need to enter a locked building and how you get in isn't linear or scripted. It's not just about shooting a guard and taking his keycard, which could of course be an option, because you can also sneak through the window. You can hack the door because it's electronic. Perhaps there's an underground passage that goes in there, but you need to be strong enough to move a dumpster bin away from the manhole that actually leads in. Everything around you is a potential solution, and that's what I feel best describes the immersive sim. So keeping that in mind, why are these games not popular in the same way that a linear Call of Duty campaign is, where there's just one option every time? All you're doing is shooting people, there's no choice, the levels are barely designed, nothing's complex, and yet the intricately designed Prey, for instance, just didn't sell in the same way. The main reason for this, I feel, is that publishers simply don't like them. An immersive sim is like the dream game for an actual designer. All these possibilities, they can put everything they've learned to the test. But then they bang heads with Mr. Electronic Arts, who calls these sorts of games a complete waste of time. The reason publishers do this is in their mind, gamers do not want choice. They only want to do simple order following. It's the whole reason every game now has quest markers, because they don't want to suddenly lead you to a quest objective with a set of directions like it was in games like Morrowind. They want to spoon feed everything to us, and not even in a classy way like at a high-end restaurant. They want to do it like you're a baby, and they've got one of those spoons shaped like an aeroplane and they feed us with that. They think we're all idiots. The publisher's mindset then, and I'm going to use Bethesda as an example here, because they publish all of Arcane's recent immersive sims like Dishonored and Prey. What they'll do is they'll greenlight an immersive sim style game, but then they'll market it as something else. Because they think the average gamer needs everything to be action focused. They only market the action part. For instance, if you look at their upcoming Deathloop game, and I will say that I'm just not that hyped for that title, and that is just because Arcane's director, he actually left a few years ago, and he gave the AAA industry a big fuck you. Which does tell me that Bethesda have probably interfered, and it'll probably feel a bit more corporate and have a lot more online elements. That being said, Arcane have still maintained that this is going to be an immersive sim. It's going to have that feel, and there's going to be many different angles that you can tackle the game in. Bethesda though have marketed this completely as a first-person shooter, and if you knew nothing about the game and you only saw the trailer, that is exactly what you would think it is. They're doing this because they don't want little Timmy to see them demonstrate all angles of the game, and then show him an area where stealth works fantastically. Why? Because I think he's going to get bored of the lack of shooting and he's going to go back to Fortnite. What they're doing just doesn't work though, because if all I want is a high quality FPS experience, I'm probably not going to play Deathloop. I'm not going to play Deus Ex. That's not what I'm playing those games for. Could I choose to optimize my character as being shooter focused? Absolutely. But I make a choice to do that, just like I can choose to play it with a stealth focus instead. What happens then is little Timmy just sees an average looking shooter being advertised, and of course he's going to go back to Fortnite. He hasn't been shown anything original or anything unique, and publishers are too scared to do what they should be doing. And that is to really emphasize the fact that you can play these games however you want. You can even show two parts of a level that are exactly the same, but do so from two different perspectives. In one, some dude comes in, he's blowing everyone's head off, he's carving everyone's limbs up in Rambo fashion, and then in the other playthrough, you have Leon the professional essentially, stealthily taking out his targets, and he's pretty much a ghost. Little Timmy, he might then start to think that this is awesome and he can play however he might want. It might start to be really appealing. And before Bethesda say to me that I'm just an idiot gamer who doesn't publish titles for a living, he doesn't know what he's talking about, what I'll say is that their method has not worked. Dishonored 2, it didn't sell. Prey didn't sell, and it's because they stuffed up all the marketing. What do almost all immersive sims, aside from the awful Thief 2016, have in common? The people who play them, along with mainstream critics, they love them. They think they're absolutely fantastic, but they don't sell, and to me that comes down to a marketing problem that has just not been solved. I think part of the reason it hasn't been solved is no publisher wants to take the risk of actually solving it because they think they might stumble along the way, and that to me is absolutely pathetic. So many great series, they've died out because of this lack of risk-taking. And I can tell you that if one of these games gets the attention it actually deserves, then it's going to sell, it's going to be a big success. There is a counterpoint to that though. Do the publishers actually have a point, and would the average mainstream gamer get too confused by a game like Prey or Deus Ex? Well, I mean, it's complicated. I think if you grew up with old school games, and for me a lot of my first titles were point-and-click games like Monkey Island and Grim Fandango. These games were very challenging as a young kid, and I think it really helped my brain understand games that took a lot more trial and error to really enjoy, and it kind of helped my mindset there. In modern day, it's the EA spoon feeding again, and when you've only experienced titles like Assassin's Creed that are mostly just action and chasing markers around the map, it's going to be pretty hard to then go back and adjust to a less brain-dead style of game. I'm not trying to come off as elitist there either. What I'm trying to say is if the only games you've played are games like Far Cry or Assassin's Creed, the modern ones, I think it's going to be harder to transition back to older style games or older style mechanics. And a lot of those mechanics are not actually outdated, they're just seen as too complex. For example, placing a quest marker on the map, that is not innovative by any means. Actually giving you proper directions that make sense with the graphics in front of you. For example, cross the river, cross the mountain with the statue next to it. That's where you're going to reach the cave. That to me would be much more complex and much more interesting in modern day, rather than just, right, I'm going to look at my mini-map, that's where I need to go. So how do you bridge the gap and bring those modern gamers into the fold to grow the audience of series like Dishonored or whatever new immersive sim like Deathloop comes out? I think it's about really advertising and demonstrating in-game that choice is a good thing. It's a positive thing. Most games these days rarely get you to make a decision, or even worse, they almost punish you for making one. To give an example, a lot of console players are very big on their achievements or trophies, and many sims or RPGs, they're going to have a trophy for experiencing both sides of the choices. So let's say in an RPG you've got a choice between siding with the Hunters or the Wolf Clan. If you choose the Hunters, you're going to get a trophy, and vice versa if you side with the Wolf people. Normally that's great, I've got no problem with that actual choice being in the game, but because of the trophy system, what tends to happen is the most efficient way to get both those trophies is to save before making the choice. And then you're going to experience both sides all at once, which is encouraging people to ruin choice making in games. And I want to say that I don't actually give a shit about achievements or trophies. I don't care if they're on Steam, they're on GOG. I'm not really too bothered by it. The only thing I ever look at is to see like the percentage of what people have completed games or where they've got up to. And sometimes in RPGs like Divinity Original Sin, it's a bit sad to see how low the completion rate is, because it makes me think people aren't really playing them through, and I hope it doesn't stop games like that from being made in the future. Obviously, trophy hunting is optional, but they've created a sort of culture within these achievement systems, and it's something I really want to change. Don't tie achievements like that into decision making, because I read a lot of people's thoughts on all corners of the internet, and it's something that happens a lot. People are obsessed with those things. Newer immersive sims could learn from that by ensuring choice becomes an exciting positive for all players, making it clear that you can't really make the wrong choice. It's just going to mean a different experience. Touching on the current state of the immersive sim, it's very slim pickings at the moment. A year or two ago, I had huge hopes for Underworld Ascendant, which was meant to be the spiritual successor to perhaps the first immersive sim in Ultima Underworld, but it turned out to be a catastrophic disaster. To properly explain just how bad it was, this is a title that makes Mass Effect Andromeda look like Baldur's Gate or Dragon Age Origins, whatever your favourite RPG might be. It genuinely feels like the producers of the game decided to get a couple of interns to make it over a weekend, while they spend all of the actual development money on a new Ferrari. It's an utter joke. That unfortunately pretty much sums up the current state of the immersive sim. System Shock 3, that's meant to be made by Tencent, who are known for making the most greedy, horribly monetized mobile phone games out there, so I really take a step back if that was one you were excited for. On the Deus Ex front, the developer behind the newer titles is apparently working on a Guardians of the Galaxy title, which probably just means more crap, similar to the Avengers. Oh, hooray! And not a lot else is happening with the big developers aside from Deathloop. Hold that thought though, because I prefer not to end these discussions just on a sour note, as things are pretty much crazy enough in the world right now. So here's what I want to say. I see a lot more indie developers who feel they can pull off immersive sims nowadays. I had a video just a few weeks ago about a whole lot of old school looking games, including Graven by 3D Realms. And while it's different in tone to like a Deus Ex, it's got a lot of immersive sim vibes and looks to be one to check out. Gloomwood is another, which gives me a lot of original Thief vibes, and Core Decay, that's another excellent looking game, and it genuinely brought me back to Deus Ex and System Shock 2. I think the ideal scenario here would be for indie titles to pave the way for big publishers to actually see what happens when you present these games for what they really are. Rather than marketing Prey 2017 as an FPS in line with the original Prey, maybe they'll see that showing everyone all the cool and nifty ways you can play it isn't actually that bad and instead creates excitement. There is another cool looking game on the horizon called Weird West, and it's actually created by the ex-director of Arcane Studios who I mentioned earlier, how he left as he felt the AAA industry was getting way too commercialized. This one's pretty interesting because it's isometric, but it also has what feels like a Borderlands art style, but that last part's nothing to fear because the actual gameplay, it looks far more in line with immersive sims, offering a ton of choice and also promising that every playthrough is going to be completely different. So while a lot of these indie games do look fantastic, my absolute hope is that we get to a stage one day where AAA isn't so dumbed down. Maybe we can have something more in the middle. So there's like the indie, there's the more like AA studios. I'd think of a studio like Piranha Bytes, who make the Gothic and make the Elix games. I'd probably have them in that kind of category. It's not completely indie, but somewhere in the middle. I just hope there's less dumbing down and less games out there that are like Assassin's Creed, the modern ones, where it's just about throwing you in an open world that's basically full of junk. And I do think that the reason the modern gaming industry makes so many of these open world games that all feel kind of copy and pasted, they all feel the same. I feel the reason it happens is because it's much easier to design dumbed down game mechanics in a world that's not really level designed. It's just you can go absolutely anywhere and there's no real consequence for going somewhere you're not meant to really go, I suppose. It's not really like that, and I just think they do it because they want to make sure that you can just follow a mini-map around, they can make it really easy. And I can say that one of the main reasons that I make these videos is just in the hope that someone stumbles upon the channel who might have thought to themselves one day, right, I'm playing a lot of games that just feel not as complex as they used to. And I'm not even talking about like the DOS days or even like the late 90s, just even in like the last 10-15 years, and they just feel something's been kind of missing. I can say for myself that Divinity Original Sin was really the game for me, where I played it back in like 2016, 2017, whenever it came out, and I thought, modern games just don't do what Divinity does, or even other games like Wasteland 3. There's just such a big gap between the Assassin's Creed and those sort of titles. So I hope that gap can grow smaller. I hope with consumer pushback over the years that more people look at great titles. And Immersive Sims, they're right up there as some of my favourites, and I think a lot more people should give them a chance. Even some of the newer ones, they're still pretty good, like Dishonored 2 and Prey. I really enjoyed those games, probably close to my games of the year in the respective years that those games came out. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please comment, like, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks very much, and bye-bye.